guys, it's Kelly here, and today's video is featuring some stamps and dies from Catherine Pooler's Stamp of Approval box. If you don't know what that is, I will explain it a little bit later, but I wanted to show or explain first what I'm doing. So in one of the stamp sets, there are a lot of floral images and these beautiful little leaves, which remind me so very much of Zentangle, which I totally love. So I thought that these would be super cute to build up a flower. So I love this little 4-petal flower. I think that would be super cute by itself, but I wanted something that was a little bigger, a little bolder. So what I'm doing is I'm not masking at all. I'm just stamping in Copic Safe ink. I'm stamping the petal in between, or the leaf. It's a petal right now, so I'm calling it a petal. In between each of the other petals. When I wanted to add my leaves, I did cut little masks just because there's 2 leaves in the, well, there's more than 2, but 2 that are designed like this in the set. And one of them like curves to the left and one of them curves to the right. So because I wanted the leaves to sit behind the flower, I did have to do a little bit of masking for this part. But really, I mean, I built up that entire flower with 0 masking. And so I'm a fan of that because I love the way masking looks, but sometimes it's a little tedious. And I certainly wasn't going to cut all these teeny tiny little leaf. I'm not that committed. I mean, that's crazy. So I built up this image and then I'm going to Copic color it. So this is my favorite green combination. If you watched any of my videos before, you know this is my go-to. I'm a yellow-green girl. So I'm starting where my shading would be the darkest, which is where the leaves are laying underneath the petals or underneath each other. And I'm just using a light hand, very short flicking motions. This isn't a large image, and I wanted to make sure that I conserve some area for my lightest point, which would be like the tip of the leaf. So I'm just trying to add a little bit of the darker shading to where it would be behind. Anything that's darker naturally falls behind. So that's, you know, how we want to color those things so that they look correct. And then I'm just going from lightest to darkest, darkest to lightest to get a good blend. And then when I do the tips of it with the YG01, I'm actually bringing it in from the edge. So I just showed you those 3 leaves. I colored the rest of them exactly the same. And then we're going to move on to the flower. The way that I picked my colors was I wanted to do something that was going to be complementary. Yellow and purple sit across from each other on the color wheel, so they're always going to be beautiful together. Another thing that you can do when you're picking color combinations is find 2 colors that are next to each other and then pick the one that's across from it. Those would be complementary as well. So yellow and green sit next to each other and then the purple is across, so everybody plays nice together. You don't have colors competing on your card. They're just going to work really well. So yellows, I struggle a little bit with the shading. This time I decided that I was going to shade it with an E, and I think that worked out pretty nicely. But I'm sure you all have your own color combinations that you struggle with. For me, it's just yellows. Every time you watch a video of mine, I'm sure they're probably different because I can't find something that I love. So I wanted the center to be yellow, and doing those 4 in the center really gives it like a focal point, where because we were creating this flower with leaves, it needs to have something in the center. It needs to have something that's going to give it the look of a floral. So doing those 4 petals in the center really gives it that something that looks like it's opening up and blooming. For my purples, I'm coloring the same way. I am starting with my lightest color. The only difference here is on the center of the flower and on the leaves, I didn't add anything to the edges. For these petals, I'm going to shade the tops and the bottoms. This gives the petals a more round look. It makes them appear to be folding so that the middle of the flower is coming up. The lightest portion is going to be raised to the front. So it just makes them look like they're rolling backward, like the flower is really opening up. That's why I opted to color them this way. When it comes to flowers, this is my favorite way to color them. I like when the petals look like they're super round coming off the page. If you don't, if you prefer just to do the same thing that I did, you know, with the leaves and with the inside of the flower, you can do that too. It's still a pretty look. It's just different. Just depends on what you're going for. So I chose 4 colors. I usually do. And that's what I'm going with. Lightest to darkest, darkest to lightest. So while you watch me color, let's talk a little bit about Stamp of Approval. Stamp of Approval is basically a quarterly box. It's not a kit like where you're going to get embellishments and papers and stamps. It's not like that. It is all stamps and dies. So the price point is a little bit higher, but what you're getting in the box is a little bit more than what I guess you normally get with a kit. Because it's not going to be, like I said, the papers, the ribbon, the enamel dots, things like that. It's going to be all stamp sets, die sets. And basically, Catherine goes through and she handpicks them, or in this case, for this one, she actually worked with some really stellar companies, Casual Fridays, Gina K, Sugar Pea, so just some really wonderful people who are well known in the crafting stamping industry. And she designed some of these stamp sets. So, there, you know, it's if you're into kits, this may be something that I called it a kit. It's not a kit. Come on, Kelly, get it together, right? If you're into having happy surprises delivered to your door, this might be something that you might want to look into. I was super stoked when Catherine emailed me, inviting me to play along, because it was a surprise for me to get it in the mail too. And I love surprises. I absolutely love them. I'm sad for people who don't enjoy them. But so, you know, this is just one way to use the ton of product that you get in there. I really, this card is a little bit, it turned out to be a little bit busier than what I normally would do. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. I think it's a good thing to kind of stretch yourself and try different things, go outside of your comfort zone a little bit. I have a couple more cards that I created with the Stamp of Approval box, and I have to be honest, this one is not my favorite. That doesn't mean that I don't like it. It's not the one that I was like, man, I really love this. I think that it's a really cool idea. I think that those, like I said, those 4 petal flowers would be super cool. But I do think that there's a lot that you can do with that. So now we're on the second to last color, and I am just super quickly, I mean, you can see it is sped up to twice the time that it normally takes me, like in real life, because otherwise we'd be here for 100 years. But I really am moving rather quickly. I usually do on the second time through, and I'm not being terribly careful to do a ton of blending. I like the striations. This particular stamp is drawn with them in there, and I just kind of embraced that. But we're going to do a couple more things to make it appear to be more of a single image versus a bunch of smaller images we stamped together. So that's going to be the coloring of the flower. I knew I wanted to do a little something in the background, so I'm actually going to do a drop shadow with the blue greens, which means my light source is coming from the top right, and so the shadows would be to the bottom left. So I'm starting with my darkest color, and I am drawing in those little bit of shadows. I'm also filling in any of the areas where, in between the petals, where it was white. This is going to be the first thing that we're doing that's going to make this flower look a little bit more cohesive. The second thing, well, we're not there yet. So anyway, I took my second to my mid-tone. We'll call it my mid-tone. I only use 3 colors here. And I'm just blending out that super dark blue-green. And then for the last color, which is the BG11, I'm going to surround the whole image. So even the parts that don't have a shadow, I'm just going to outline the entire thing, just so that it has a little bit of color going on behind it. I personally feel like blues, blue-greens are kind of like neutral colors when it comes to backgrounds. That's just me. So this is the second thing we're going to do to make this a little bit more cohesive. I am adding little black dots to the center that would be like stamen for the flower, and this is going to help give those 4 petals a more unified look. So already you can tell it's starting to come together a little more. I prefer to outline all of my images, so that's what I'm doing here. I will tell you I only outlined the outside of the petal. I didn't do all of the striations in between. I'm adding little white highlights to those white dots just to suggest even more that it's one complete flower. And then I'm going to do something with the background here. So I'm using Lake House by W+9 and a geometric pattern that is included in the box. And I'm just trying to figure out where I'm going to put it. And I am stamping directly over my flower. The reason I'm stamping directly over my flower is because it's a super light color. Oh, also, I'm kind of stamping off just random areas so that it wasn't like a solid background. So some parts are going to be lighter than others. It's, maybe like a little bit more of a distressed look. But I'm telling you that I stamped over my Copic coloring, but because that dye ink that I use, that W+9 dye ink, is alcohol based, it also picked up some of the purple. So interdispersed throughout that background stamping is maybe some green or some yellow or some purple. That didn't bother me, but if it's going to bother you, then you're going to want to mask. I just straight up, I'm going to be honest with you, there was no way I was masking all those petals. It just wasn't happening. Did not even occur to me as a thought in my head. I think that it came out fine, but if that's something you're concerned about, just be aware. So I have a die cut U that I have die cut out of black, and I'm just using little dots of Tombow Mono Multi Glue to adhere that down. And then the sentiment I really liked because I haven't seen it before, and it says "You make a difference" is what it's going to say. But I wanted to stagger my stamping, so I'm just using a Post-it to block off the difference portion of it, and then I'm going to clean it really, really good, and then I'm going to use the Post-it to mask off "Make a," and then just stamp the difference. You can do this with Post-its, you can do this with tape, you can cut your stamps. There's a lot of different ways you can do this. I prefer not to cut my stamps, so this is the way that I get around it. I'm going to use some clear sequins from Pretty Pink Posh to just kind of highlight my sentiment. And then last but not least, I cannot complete a card without putting down a little bit of shimmer. So this is just some clear Wink of Stella. I did the whole yellow section, and then on the violet petals, I just did the edges. And that is the complete card. So I hope that you will head over to the Stamp of Approval store, check out what they have, and then there's a ton of other inspiration which will be linked on my blog. If you're watching on YouTube, my blog posts will be linked in the description. So thank you so much for joining me. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. I will catch you in the next video. Bye.